On Tech News today, Mobile World Congress finishes day one, Comcast makes a deal with Netflix, and is there a Nexus Smartwatch at hand? All that and more coming up next.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News today is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
It's Monday, February 24th, 2014, and this is Tech News Today. Today's episode is brought to you by RingCentral, a cloud-based phone system we use just got better with the launch of Meetings, the full-service video conferencing feature. Zero startup costs, and RingCentral starts at under $25 per user. Try it now with a 30-day risk-free trial and buy one desk phone and get a second phone free up to 20 phones. Call 800-543-9980 or visit ringcentral.com and use our promo code TWIT. And by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that makes it fast and easy to create your own professional website or online portfolio. For a free 2-week trial and 10% off, go to squarespace.com and use the offer code TNT2. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Mike Elgin.
And I'm Jason Howell.
Tech News Today explores the most important stories of the day in conversation with the world's leading journalists. And speaking of the world's leading journalists, our guest today and co-anchor is Natalie Morris, a contributor to the Today Show, CNBC, and the Queen Latifah Show. She's also the co-founder of Read Quick, a speed reading app for iOS, and a former anchor for CNET TV. Welcome, Natalie.
Thank you very much. Good to be here. I'm excited.
So tell me, what is Queen Latifah like?
You know, you think about how fabulous she is and then double it. She really is that fabulous. Every time I work with her, I get a little bit tongue-tied because, I mean, she's got this perfectly soft skin and great stage presence. I'm getting starstruck just talking about it. Well, her skin is like a cafe mocha. She's dreamy.
Her skin is dreamy, and she's also, I think she's actually a really great actress. But anyway, we'll talk about
She's
Queen
very talented. I've been in the presence of great broadcasters, present company included.
Well, thank you. Well,
you're welcome. And you too, Jason Howell. Good to be on a podcast with you again, my old friend.
I know. I was waiting for that. We get a whole week together, so.
I know. We'll give each other more compliments as the show goes on. But thank you for inviting me for the week, you guys. This is exciting.
Thank you for doing it. This is we're really excited too. So let's get right into the news. Well, of course, it's after 7 p.m. in Barcelona, Spain, where Mobile World Congress is winding down day one. It's in the morning here in California, but it's the end of the day in Barcelona. Well, Nokia rolled out 3 Android phones this morning called the Nokia X, Nokia X Plus, and the big surprise was the Nokia XL, which I don't even believe was rumored. Sony announced a new Xperia Z2 Android waterproof smartphone, which has a 5.2-inch screen and the ability to capture image-stabilized 4K video with its 20.7 megapixel camera. They also announced the Xperia Z2 tablet, which the company claims is the world's thinnest and lightest tablet. It's also waterproof. China's Huawei unveiled a wearable wristband called the TalkBand B1, which has a strange pop-out earpiece for making calls via Bluetooth. These are just a few of the announcements that have already taken place at the event. And of course, you know, they're just coming fast and furious right now. Mark Zuckerberg is in his keynote speech, and after this show, at 11 a.m. Pacific, we're going to be covering the Samsung Unpacked 5 event. Natalie, what do you think has been some of the most interesting things to come out of Mobile World Congress so far?
Well, you know, I tend to be a little pessimistic about Mobile World Congress these days because I'm like, an Android phone is an Android phone, right? We're going to see so many of them. But I'm actually impressed with the innovation. I'm not so sure we need waterproof gadgets. I haven't seen a lot of use cases for that, and I expected all of the wearables now because mobile means phones, tablets, and now something that you put on your person. So that's neat, but I am interested in these low-cost smartphones. I think once you get into the lower-cost smartphones, you know, we see Microsoft trying to push into that into developing countries, Firefox trying to make this $25 smartphone. That's really interesting because I think the operating system will matter a whole lot less in those emerging markets. And then, you know, eventually once penetration starts to come come around, then the operating system will matter again. So it's almost like a new playing field.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really fascinating to see everybody, especially in the announcements so far, going after the emerging markets. I mean, you saw the Nokia event, which we covered last night our time, was early in the morning in Barcelona, Spain time. Microsoft's going after the low end. Nokia's going after the low end. Of course, as you mentioned, Firefox OS is going after the low end, partnering with Alcatel, ZTE, and Huawei. It makes sense because the vast majority of people on this planet do not have smartphones, and many of them don't even have feature phones. So there's a huge, hundreds of millions of people, possibly 1 billion people or more, who are going to be moving to smartphones for the first time over the next few years, maybe establishing their brand loyalties. Who knows? Everybody's going after these markets, and I think everybody's kind of going after the Samsung model. What Samsung did, just a few years ago, Samsung wasn't even a significant player, and now they dominate especially the Android space and certainly the market share space. And they did it by starting in the emerging markets, then moving up and up and up until they were huge players in the United States, Europe, and all the major markets. And they're still huge players in the emerging markets. So this is the strategy everybody wants to go after, including the Chinese giants.
And, one of the big complaints we always see about Windows phones is that the app system isn't built out enough. Well, in the emerging markets, they may not care quite as much because they already don't have a sense of what should be in the App Store. So if there's no preconceived notions, then as long as you have the big ones like a Facebook and a Twitter and a WeChat, then you're good, right? And then we can see maybe brand new types of apps that come out. I mean, we can't even conceive of what those needs might be. I know some of these big companies hire anthropologists because what we think we want out of our gadgets is not at all what they need in, say, third world countries.
Yeah, that's right. And, we're also seeing a kind of a division in the smartwatch category. And we're going to talk a little bit more about some interesting smartwatch developments later in the show. But it's interesting to note that there are kind of two types of smartwatches. There's the big, gigantic ones like the Samsung smartwatches, which oddly are running Tizen now, as they announced at the show. And then there's the tiny ones, such as the Huawei TalkBand V1, that are more like a bracelet. They're more like a kind of a Fitbit kind of a bracelet thing. And I have the feeling Apple, when they come out with their iWatch, is going to be in the latter category. It's going to be smaller, probably more minimal. Do you really see these as two categories that can survive? I mean, I can see lots of people wearing the Huawei device. It has some interesting features in it. As I mentioned before, the screen pops out and becomes an earpiece for Bluetooth for your calls. You have to use a smartphone to use that. I think that kind of bracelet-style smartwatch is going to have a better run in the mass market. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so too. But some of these vibrating bracelets that tell you when something's happening on your smartphone have been around since as early as 2007. It was the first time I saw them, and I thought that was super cool. It was a Bluetooth type notification device. So that's not necessarily new. That might have taken off a long time ago. I think with the actual information might be a whole lot more useful than just, say, a tether to that device. But I don't know. I'm part of me thinks it's super neat. Part of me is really afraid of carrying something this close to my skin. I've talked about this on Twitter before and got a lot of hate mail for it. But, part of me is also thinking this might be another 3D TV. We just don't necessarily need it. So I think I'm going to wait to see how this shakes out in the marketplace before I really opine. But if and when someone gets a really bad disease from this, you heard it here first.
All right. Well, you'll be ahead of that one. And again, it is risky because nobody really knows if these will take off. A lot of people just say we're done wearing watches. The smartphone is enough. Well, we'll see. Well, in a minute, we're gonna talk about the Netflix Comcast controversy. But first, I want to tell you about RingCentral. RingCentral is a cloud-based phone system that we use here at TWiT. And they have a lot of new features and a lot of really solid features that have been around for a while. When we built the phone system and the whole setup here at TWiT, we didn't want a big old-fashioned PBX system in the basement. Those things are expensive, they're hard to maintain, and so on. We wanted to do everything cloud-based, so we went with RingCentral. It was really a no-brainer, and we love RingCentral because it had zero startup costs, and again, there's no PBX hardware to install or maintain. And now RingCentral has something called Meetings. In addition to all that we love about RingCentral, like receiving voicemails through email, sending and receiving fax messages, and so on, including the auto receptionist who greets callers, they now have Meetings, which can host face-to-face meetings in high definition, share desktops and documents with anyone, anytime. Meetings makes RingCentral the single best solution on the market today, and it's really quite unbelievable. RingCentral offers an all-inclusive pricing under $25 a month per user. That is very, very low. And you can start right now with a 30-day risk-free trial. And they have a special offer for listeners of Tech News Today. When you buy one desk phone, you get a second phone free, up to 20 phones. So call this number designated for TWIT listeners, 800-543-9980. That's 800-543-9980. Or you can go to ringcentral.com and use the promo code TWIT. And we thank them for sponsoring Tech News Today. Well, Netflix will pay Comcast for a direct connection, which should boost Netflix performance for Comcast customers. Terms of the deal have not been disclosed, and the move has been slammed as a blow against net neutrality. That claim is probably an exaggeration, but the deal does raise concerns. In fact, such arrangements are commonplace with the exception of one minor detail. Netflix is actually paying for it. Again, we don't know how much. Usually these so-called peering deals are seen as mutually beneficial arrangements to improve service, and no money changes hands. Another reason this is a big deal is that Netflix is a big user of network capacity, gobbling up about 30% of all internet traffic during peak hours. Now, you know, Frost & Sullivan principal analyst Dan Rayburn had a really interesting column about this, and he sharply criticized the media's coverage of the deal. He had some interesting points to make. For starters, he said that contrary to media reports, the deal could actually lower costs. He says that a company like Netflix, which doesn't have any network infrastructure of its own, has to essentially rent it or pay for it from someone. And in the past, they've been using third parties to connect them eventually to providers, internet providers like Comcast. They're sort of cutting out the middleman and paying Comcast directly. And so, again, this is not anything out of the ordinary, and it could be a more efficient way to deliver Netflix massive amounts of IP going over the internet. So still, Natalie, as a broadcaster, are you concerned about this deal? I mean, there's money changing hands, so that's kind of a new thing here. And if companies like Comcast start charging for this, it gets into some weird, dicey areas that feel kind of like net neutrality violations. What do you think?
Right. Well, as soon as this deal was announced, people started screaming, oh, no, we're going to have to pay for this eventually. They're going to pass the cost down to us. But that's not necessarily true because, like you said, Netflix was already paying third-party content delivery networks. So that cost, if it's significantly more, Netflix is a public company. We'll know that soon. That will be disclosed in their financials. Even though the terms of this deal has not been disclosed yet, we'll be able to find what they're paying for this type of thing. And if it's significantly more, we'll see our rates go up. So I'm not so concerned about this. I know there were some that were saying this might not have been allowed had the FCC's net neutrality rules been passed. And I don't know, I really enjoyed this streaming media blog that you mentioned where he said it's just money going in through different funnels, but not a different system. In fact, it might be a more efficient system, which could save us money. So I bought into that. I'm not so concerned about that, no. I guess where I tend to be a little bit more concerned is if Netflix has the money for this, then obviously startups, this could hurt innovation because what startup that wants to compete with Netflix will have this money? But again, they'd have to pay it anyway because Netflix was already paying these third-party delivery networks.
One of the things that concerns me is that reportedly the performance of Netflix through Comcast has been declining recently, and supposedly this deal will kind of speed it back up again. And it bothers me that essentially Comcast is being paid to overcome either poor performance of the internet generally, or the last mile, or somewhere there are constraints with internet performance, and now that's becoming a business model. We don't want companies like Comcast being rewarded financially because of constraints or poor network performance in general. That's why I love Google Fiber type initiatives where somebody will go into a city or an area, part of a city, and just build it out with super high-speed internet connectivity, in the case of Google Fiber at low cost, because then that sort of removes the incentive or the demand or the requirement really for a company like Netflix to make sure whatever it takes, even if it takes paying a lot of money for it, to get high-performance content delivered. So I really would love to see a lot more aggressive buildup of network capacity in the United States. U.S. is way behind many countries in the world, maybe even a dozen countries in terms of network performance, and it's tied up with this sort of quasi-monopoly of a very small number of providers and options for consumers. So I'm really concerned about that, and I hope that this doesn't become a trend where this scarcity of high-speed content delivery becomes a business model for companies.
And what does this say about the current business model as well? I'm really interested in hearing from these third-party delivery networks about, hey, we could have done it better. I mean, they're losing a lot of business, I'm assuming. So I'm not a networking engineer, but I would like to hear from the existing infrastructure, from people who work and profit from that, for them to say, this didn't have to happen. I haven't heard much of that.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I hope that we'll see a lot better journalism on this going forward and hear from the real network engineers, as you say. Well, the Wall Street Journal reported over the weekend that Google is working with LG Electronics to create a smartwatch. This sounds a lot to me, Natalie, like kind of a Nexus smartwatch, doesn't it? I mean, this is working with LG, and it's sounding like it's going to be kind of a reference design type of device. What do you think? Do you think Google's actually working on a Nexus smartwatch?
Oh, I'm sure they are. Whether or not these are the exact details, it remains to be seen. But I'm sure they're working on it in some capacity. And we've seen Google use this model before with the Nexus, with the original Google phone. What was the LG flip phone, the very first one?
Yeah,
I'm forgetting the name of it. But yeah, they like to slap their name on things that they don't actually manufacture, but they just conceive of and then send it over to a manufacturer and say, this is our marquee phone. And that seems to work for them. When they first started doing this, we thought, wow, this is really going to cannibalize all their other OEMs, but it doesn't. They sort of push their own quietly, and then the other ones exist. It works. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. And I think that it's reasonable to guess that Google may come out with a Nexus type program for this smartwatch. Again, this is expected in June, and guess what else is in June? Google I/O, where they tend to hand out hardware. It's also expected to possibly ship as early as June. So you can imagine a scenario where a Google Nexus smartwatch, again, I'm making that up. They haven't announced that it's going to be called the Nexus or it's going to be a Nexus type of deal. But if it's like the Nexus phone and tablets, then you're looking at an easy-to-hack device that's designed for people to tinker with it, both on the software level and even on the hardware level. For example, the Nexus 5, you can pull that thing apart with the minimal tools, take it all apart. There's hardly any glue. They really want people to play with it, tinker with it, and they're using it not as just a product to sell for profit as much as it is for a kind of a reference design and a device that the community, the ecosystem can use to sort of experiment and push the envelope. And they also kind of show the way. And the Nexus 5, is a kind of it's kind of an ugly phone. It's not, the fit and finish is nowhere near something like an iPhone or like an HTC One or even a Moto X, but it's functional and it's very, very low cost. That's another thing that another attribute we might see with this device. It could be a low cost smartwatch, and that would be cool. The other thing to point out, probably the coolest feature that we have heard from reports so far, is that it's going to be centered around Google Now. So that's really a cool thing. A watch running Google Now, that sounds like something I could really get into.
Yeah, and I'm wondering how much the Google Glass team has been talking to the Google Smartwatch team, because you think of this trifecta of what you've got on you, then you could have the glass and the watch and the smartphone. And that could even be really good for bioauthentication, where you get close to something and it knows you're you. So there's the end of passwords. That's a really, really neat idea.
Yeah, it really is. Well, Microsoft's Joe Belfiore announced 9 new hardware partners over the weekend. The company also said they plan to lower some requirements for the device with the intention of enabling lower-cost Windows Phone handsets for, again, emerging markets. Microsoft's list of new partners includes Foxconn, Gionee, JSR, Carbon, I hope I'm pronouncing these right, Lava, Lenovo, LG, Longcheer, and ZTE. There's a few odd things about this list. First of all, haven't LG and ZTE made Windows Phone handsets before?
Yeah.
I mean,
I believe they have.
I wonder why they're on this list. Speculation is that maybe these companies are having a renewed commitment, or maybe they'd fallen off the wagon and maybe they're getting back on something like that. Or
maybe were they using Qualcomm chips before? Because, the Qualcomm part was the most interesting part to me, because I've been following their work in mobile for a long time. And what they're really good at is energy efficient chips. So if you think about a smartphone phone for the emerging markets. They don't just sit around a computer desk with their phone plugged in all day, right? They need phones that last for a really long time and are really energy efficient. So maybe this sort of Qualcomm partnership is the newest part.
Yeah, it's also, they have Foxconn as a partner, and Foxconn is a contract manufacturer. They've made noises that they may go into the branded hardware device business. So that was kind of odd. Another one was Lenovo. That was a surprise, and I guess it kind of makes sense from Lenovo's perspective. Maybe they want to have their hands in all the cookie jars. They just are in the process of buying the Motorola handset business from Google. So, you know, they're obviously going to be a major Android maker. But for Lenovo to come out and publicly embrace Windows Phone is kind of cool. And I think most Americans probably never heard of some of these companies like Gionee, JSR, Carbone, Lava, Longcheer. These are not super mainstream handset manufacturers. So it's they, you know, nine new devices manufacturers sounds like a lot, but some of them are kind of like barely recognizable. A couple of them are already been manufacturing Windows Phone handsets. So
now, in these emerging markets, these prices that we're looking at are not subsidized prices, right? These are just manufacturing prices. And that's the most interesting part to me. Why is that so different than why do we have to pay such high subsidized prices?
Because
if
we're
they
suckers.
can do it.
That's
right. It's because it's a simple supply and demand.
That's right.
So,
in emerging markets, though, where there's a lack of subsidies, they also nickel and dime them on things like text messaging and, you know, just basic internet access. Their costs are vastly lower. It's true, but they have other ways to stick it to customers. And you know, one of the ways also in a related story to this that Microsoft is going after emerging markets is that they decided to remove some of their requirements for Windows phones. They no longer require phones to have a camera on the back or search buttons and so on, and they're adding support for Snapdragon 200 and 400 chipsets, even as Qualcomm goes forward and announces at Mobile World Congress the 801 Snapdragon 801. So it's an interesting, you know, development, and I think this is one of the big themes at Mobile World Congress. Everybody's going after the emerging markets, and that's. Part of that is a reflection of the degree to which Apple and Samsung have locked up the high end of the market. So we'll be watching additional moves toward the emerging market later this week.
and us in the already emerged market, we're boring.
Yes.
We're demanding.
That's right.
We're
spoiled. Emerged already. What do they want with us
Such a
anymore?
first world problem. We can't get an app store that's fully robust.
Don't forget us,
on.
Microsoft. Don't forget us. We're still here. We're emerged. Get used to it. All right, well, Apple fixed a security flaw in iOS Friday, but temporarily left its OS X open to attack, according to a story by James Temple on Recode. Security researchers say the bug, called Go to Fail, could have made Apple's own Safari browser and mail application vulnerable. Apple said they're working on a patch. James Temple is a senior editor at Recode, and he joins us to explain this story. Welcome, James.
Thanks for having me on.
So can you tell us more about this Go to Fail bug?
Yeah, I mean, basically, you know, over the weekend on Friday, Apple announced, or didn't actually announce, but you could see on their security page that they had updated its mobile software to patch this go to fail. And it ended up generating a lot of attention over the weekend, and people realized that the same vulnerability was in their desktop operating system, which had not yet been patched, and up until now, last I checked, has still not been patched. Security researchers say that basically it interrupts the standard security protocols for connecting a device to a server, and so it enables what's known as a man-in-the-middle attack, so that a lurker could be grabbing the data that's going between your phone or your laptop and a network connection, say on the Wi-Fi at a coffee shop or a restaurant or something.
Gotcha. Now, researchers claim to be shocked by Apple's practices relating to how they communicated the bug to users. What is their complaint there?
Well, I mean, I think part of the complaint is that it came out. There wasn't a direct announcement about it. You know, there was an update which ended up getting publicized, in which researchers sort of noticed and started publicizing on their own. So they haven't been, you know, they haven't gone to great lengths to get this information out. I have heard, I haven't seen one personally, but I have heard that people have been getting notifications on their iOS devices suggesting that they update. But you get those all the time. It's a different scenario being told that there's a new version available than it is to be told that there's a vulnerability that you really should patch as soon as possible.
So very quickly, what should Mac owners do to protect themselves?
Well, I think that, you know, for your phone or your iPad, you should update if you haven't already. And, you know, when there is a patch available for OS X, everyone should patch that as quickly as possible as well. Over the weekend, some security researchers were pointing out, like Ashkan Sultani, that a number of Apple apps were particularly susceptible to this, including Calendar, FaceTime, iBooks, Safari, the Twitter Mac desktop client. So you also might want to consider using alternatives for those for the next few days until Apple does update the software and provides a little more clarity on what exactly is going on.
Well, it's all
now,
very.
James,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Natalie.
This is Natalie Morris. James, I'm just wondering, is this the start of a new trend? We used to see Mac users all the time running around saying, we're not, susceptible to bugs. It just doesn't happen to Mac users. So do you think that this is going to be something? I mean, obviously hackers are going to start to target Macs. It just didn't happen. It just didn't get through quite as much. So is this the beginning of a new era?
It's a very good question. And, you know, the common wisdom on it for a long time has been that, you know, hackers go where the people are, and forever, you know, there's such a greater installed base of Windows versus Mac, but, you know, the operating system has been gaining popularity, obviously, in recent years, especially on the mobile side, and so, you know, we don't. What we know here is that this was vulnerable. We're not quite sure. What's less clear is whether people have taken advantage of this, exploited this vulnerability. But certainly there are a lot of Apple users, and so that it's a lucrative target for hackers potentially.
Right.
Well, James, I thank you for coming on and telling us about this bug, and everyone should read James's stories on Recode. That was really great stuff, and thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
You can find James Temple at recode.net and on Twitter at jtemple. Well, in a minute, we're going to get some late-breaking news on WhatsApp, but first I want to tell you about Squarespace. Squarespace is an incredible all-in-one platform for making your own professional quality website or online portfolio. I've used it for years. I still use it. It's just such a fantastic site. And for a free 2-week trial and 10% off, you can go to squarespace.com and use offer code TNT2. So what is Squarespace exactly? Well, it's a site where you can go and pick from among 25 beautiful templates to start with. You pick the template. That's not the final website. You can start modifying and tweaking it with their easy-to-use tools to create a completely unique custom website, all your own, for whatever purpose you need it for your business, for your personal life, or create a blog, whatever you want to do with a website, you can do it on Squarespace. And what you'll end up with is something elegant, beautiful, simple, and really high performance. They also host, of course. They host the website for you, so you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. And it's inexpensive. It starts at just $8 a month and includes a free domain name if you sign up for a year. If you've got a small business, you are in luck. They have something called a logo creator tool. It's a basic tool for individuals and small businesses to create a simple identity for themselves. You'll be shocked at how easy it is to create a really professional logo for your website and for your business in general. They have fantastic, really legendary tech support, open 24/7, and a real person always gets back to you right away with an answer to your question. It's really remarkable tech support. I've used them a couple of times. They always answered my questions right away, and I was always very satisfied with the tech support. They're mobile ready. A new Squarespace metric app for iPhone and iPad lets you check site stats like page views, unique visitors, and social media follows. And the blog app, you can make text updates, tap and drag images to change layouts, and so on. So start a free 2-week trial with no credit card required and start building your Squarespace website today. When you decide to sign up for Squarespace, make sure you use the offer code TNT2. That'll get you 10% off. And it'll also enable you to show your support for Tech News Today, and we appreciate that. We also thank Squarespace for their support of Tech News Today, and remember that a better web awaits, and it starts with your Squarespace website. Well, WhatsApp CEO Jan Koum announced at Mobile World Congress today that his app will add voice calling by June. He also confirmed that WhatsApp still has no plans for advertising. Don't know how they're going to pay for the phone feature. The company is being acquired by Facebook, of course, and in related news, Koum announced yesterday that a network router knocked out WhatsApp for more than 3 hours on Saturday. With us to talk about this is Jamie Rigg, an associate editor at Engadget. Welcome, Jamie.
Hi, guys. Thanks very much for having me on.
Well, we appreciate it. Now, this appears to be a huge challenge to Google, which offers Google Voice, of course, and also phone-based Hangouts, but it also seems to challenge Microsoft, which owns Skype. Is this going to be like a Skype-like service? Will this compete with Skype on the international market for internet phone calls?
Yeah, sure. Obviously, WhatsApp is an extremely popular, IM application, almost 500 million kind of monthly users. So if you think about it, it's beyond the kind of Facebook angle, which is, this happening so close to the acquisition. If you think about them introducing voice calling, voice messaging, things like that, then of course it's going to be a massive competitor to other services, like Skype. You've got Gtalk, even indirectly, I guess, FaceTime, and Viber and everything. So it's the fact that they have such a crazy number of users means that it's going to be stiff competition for the existing VoIP providers.
Well, Jamie, I apologize for cutting this interview a little short. We have to move on to the Samsung event that's starting in about 5 minutes. But I do thank you for coming on and explaining the WhatsApp announcement today.
No problem. Thanks very much.
All right. You can find Jamie's work at engadget.com and on Twitter at jmerigg. So let me spell that, JMERIGG. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Well, that's our show, and I want to thank you, Natalie, for co-anchoring with me today. You are awesome, as always.
Oh, thank you. Good to be back on the show, and good to take my maiden voyage with you. You're doing a great job, by the way.
Thank you very much.
A very good job. I listen fairly regularly.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And, of course, Natalie will be with us all week, so this is going to be an awesome week.
I'll be here all the week. Tip your waitress.
Yes. Wonderful. Well, send your news tips to our email address at tnt@twit.tv or call 260-TNT-SHOW and leave a message. Also, post and upvote your favorite stories on our subreddit at technewstoday.reddit.com. Find the rest of our social pages by searching for Tech News Today on Twitter, Facebook, Google+, and YouTube. If you haven't already, please subscribe to Tech News Today at twit.tv/TNT. Make sure you tune into our evening newscast, Tech News Tonight with Sarah Lane at 4 p.m. Pacific. And don't miss, in just a couple of minutes, our special coverage of the live Samsung Unpacked 5 event. My name is Mike Elgin, and we will see you tomorrow.